Welcome back to the new SEC podcast. I'm Hunter Ziesman, and we are talking about Florida playing Kentucky. Florida's a 3.5-point favorite in this one, over under set at 43.5. Looking at the betting side of this game, 83% of the bets via Vegas Insider right now are on Kentucky to cover. We've seen some line movement to support that, right? And I don't necessarily dislike this bet. Everyone's heavy on it right now. I'm not taking it, and we can talk a little bit about why. These are two teams right now. They're each 3-5 on the season. They're playing a night game in Kentucky. Interestingly, the last time that Kentucky has won a home game in the SEC, it was against Florida back in 2023. So they'd be looking to get a repeat of that here. Getting another home SEC win would be huge for the program. And they have a Florida team that's a little bit down, right? You fire Billy Napier. You have Billy Gonzalez step up. They played an okay game last week against Georgia. Florida did. Now, looking at the Kentucky side of the ball and why people might be feeling some confidence in Kentucky going into this game and where that's coming from, they're really surging, for lack of a better term, that's 3-5, right? They're not necessarily surging as far as the SEC standings or really the viewpoint in college football. But if you're looking at their last three games, an overtime loss to Texas, who the playoff committee just put in the top 12. They would be sitting on the outside looking in, but that's a top 12 team they lost to in overtime. They lost to Tennessee. It was a big margin there, but they still scored 34 points. That's pretty good for their offense at Kentucky. And then they beat Auburn last week, 10-3, behind a really dominant defensive performance. They were getting to the quarterback often. It's been a downhill kind of spiral for Auburn, but it's Kentucky getting things done, right? Like the offense wasn't really humming there. We know Auburn has a good defense, but you take these last couple games and you look at Kentucky at the beginning of the season, they're starting to do things the right way. It's not always coming out as a win, but they look pretty good. They've had some interesting performances defensively, offensively. You see them in a one-score game with Ole Miss early on in the season. Then you turn around and get dogged by South Carolina, who is out of every discussion at this point, except for debating hot seats or maybe who was the bottom team in the SEC. So there's the up and down roller coaster of Kentucky football right now. What you have to do now in looking at this game is, what did they do versus Auburn and Texas that if they carried it into this game, they could not only cover but win? And it's defensive pressure. 22 total pressures versus Texas, held them to 16, right? Auburn, 26 pressures. They got 7-8 sacks in that game, only gave up 3 points. Tennessee, now where they gave up 50-plus points, they were just over 10 pressures on the game. So whenever they're getting to the quarterback, that's where you start making these quarterbacks make a mistake. We've seen a lot of turnover heavy quarterbacks or younger guys who maybe haven't had a lot of play. And right now, DJ Lagway is kind of anything but rock steady. So this is an opportunity for Kentucky to apply that pressure. Their O-line looked really good against Georgia last week, so it's not going to be easy on Kentucky. Georgia's not really a good litmus test, though, on how you perform against the pass rush, because that's not something that they've done necessarily well at this point this year. So flip side of the ball, right? Florida, they lose their developing star, Dallas Wilson, for the season, coming off of a heartbreaking loss, coaching changes. They've really got nothing to lose under this interim coach. They're just trying to continue to maintain talent, play spoiler to a team. They would have loved to have that win against Georgia last week in the rivalry matchup that they had. But right now, their best offensive asset is Jaden Ball. He's great at running. He's great at receiving. He's getting involved in every aspect of the game. And no matter what coaching staff they have, they want to play to that strength. There's going to be a matchup in this game, and it's really, how does Alex Afari on Kentucky match up against Jaden Ball and making those tackles? He's all over the field on the defensive side for Kentucky. You don't want to let a guy like Jaden Ball get involved in multiple facets of the offensive game plan. That's what we saw when Dallas Wilson was playing with Florida, that they get them the ball quickly, let them make plays downfield. Jaden Ball is that kind of guy. Who has Kentucky played to this point that we could maybe see as a prototypical running back that's going to play similar to Jaden Ball? And I'd look a little bit at Contravian Wisner for Texas. He can get involved in the pass game. He's going to get a lot of touches. So we kind of are looking at how they played in that game, and they did kind of shut Wisner down. So there's an opportunity to shut Ball down here. Last week, the Play action was pretty solid for Florida. They were able to trick the Georgia DBs who have been susceptible to that at times. And I think we'll see a little bit of that here. I wouldn't expect anything less than a 40% split on play action in this game. I think you have to do something like that to get Lagway back in rhythm. If you have a weapon, make the defense believe that that is there. We might see a different quarterback for Florida. You got Steve Spurrier kind of calling for Lagway's job or to get a second look with maybe Tramel Jones Jr. And basically a two quarterback system. If he's saying it, he's had some success there. So who knows what they're going to do. But back to the spread here and what kind of the call is on this game. Florida, 3.5-point favorites. Why does everyone feel so hot on Kentucky? And it's because they're starting to see things work, but it's against a really bad Auburn team. It is. And, you let up a lot of points to a Tennessee offense. I have this odd confidence in Florida's offense right now. I can't explain it, but if you watch the game versus Georgia last week, you have a few passes go different, could be a different story. The deep ball that we saw go incomplete, you put a shot there. They had another touchdown that, was a missed throw. A couple things go different. And if you're looking statistically at DJ Lagway, his turnover metrics are heavily weighted by the LSU game. It matters. It counts. The 5 picks he had there are really weighing on his turnover stats, especially in the interception category. He's been known to fumble the ball a few times. Cutter Boley on the flip side, 7 picks, 5 SEC games, a few fumbles here and there. And Florida's solid defensively too. So I think that they're both not winning the turnover battle. They're both kind of even on the turnover margin per game at -0.6. I think that Florida brought something to the game last week versus Georgia that if you bring that same performance here, then you win the game 100%. If we see the Florida that we saw against Georgia last week, they win the game. But I don't know if we see the Kentucky that played against Auburn, if they necessarily win the game. And that was one of their better performances, especially defensively. Well, a lot of people I think are forgetting who DJ Lagway was down the stretch of last season because we haven't necessarily seen that version of him this year. There's going to be a flip that switches. You only got about 3-4 games left. So now is the time to do it if you have it in you. It could come out in this game, proper protection, the right play calling. I think that Florida challenges this Kentucky offense and forces them, into a low-scoring game. Again, I'm going to rely on the playmakers here, and I think Jaden Ball is going to be a big piece of this game and how they get him involved, especially knowing that you're missing some weapons here. I got Florida 20-13. I have them covering. Maybe it's because I'm trying to ride against the crowd here on everyone thinking that Kentucky's got it. I think I see something, a glimmer within Florida of what they could be, all the coaching carousel and rumors aside on who they might be having at coach. I got them by 7 in this one. I'm going to take them this Saturday. Let us know what you think. If you're a Kentucky fan, Florida fan, just looking for advice on who to take this weekend. I'm curious to hear your call in this game. It's two sides that have been up and down, so it's tough to get a read on, but would love to hear your thoughts. As always, like, subscribe so you get more content like this from us. We love to talk about videos like this, and we're going to be talking more about the playoff race as it gets a little bit closer here. I'm Hunter Ziesman, new SEC podcast, and we appreciate you watching.